What is going on, everyone? Welcome to week 7 of A Dave and a Dan. I don't know about you, but if your name was Dave, you actually did all right if you played out some of our props, which were pretty sneaky, but you didn't need us last week because last week, week 6 in the NFL, in October, a lot of horror movies come out. I'm going to see Smile 2 tomorrow night. You going to be there? I know you weren't too happy when the Jets lost to the Chiefs.
I'm gonna die.
It wasn't a Jets loss. It was a Taylor Swift win.
She's gonna die.
Come on, that's
I'm gonna die.
All the Swifties, what about them?
Everybody dies. I'm gonna die.
Last week, you want to know what I saw? I saw it Sunday, all day and night. It was a marathon. It was a Halloween movie marathon. It was called Village of the Damned. That's what was going on in this NFL slate. It was Village of the Damned out there. Every favorite, you pick a favorite, it was covering, and that was the case up and down the board. I mentioned earlier a couple weeks ago, those donkey charts, if they came through every week with the underdogs, then those picks would be the donkey picks. The NFL has that unbelievable balance beam of favorites versus underdogs. As soon as you think you're on this, then that starts coming through. Now, every single 19-year-old who's betting for the first time, who just won on all the favorites, you want to know what he did? He did a big, massive favorite money line parlay. He won, and in his mind, for years to come, he's always going to think this Sunday is just going to be like that one Sunday on Village of the Damned when I won every single one. This Sunday will live in his life, but it will be so bad for him in the long run. Dave, how did you manage Village of the Damned Sunday?
On sides, actually not terrible because I didn't bet. So, okay, let's go down the list. By the way, what's up, brother? How you doing?
How's it going? How you doing? By the
Good.
way, this is why October I just keep touting. Even during the summer, I was like, if you don't rank, I did month rankings. I did like fantasy month rankings on my comedy pod. And October is the number one overall. Even baseball, which is, one of the most boring sports there is. If there is one trickle of excitement, it's on 50-degree playoff days, things like Mets, Dodgers, and the Yankees are playing. All 4 sports are on. You have the most ideal weather outside. We're in the midst of it right now. No better time of the year, in my opinion.
It's true. It's a pretty good time of the year. It is.
Who you drafted 1 overall?
What's that?
Who you drafting number 1 overall in the month rankings? You can be honest.
Nothing in the summer.
That's
amazing.
Saying,
what's that?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you have every month to choose from.
Yeah.
And you get to walk into that month. You woke up from a coma and you get to choose what month it is.
Can I give you a more specific answer? How about this? I think it's probably November for me because I don't care much about baseball this time of year unless the Phillies are around. I won't even watch any of these games. I haven't watched. The only time I do is if I have a game on the one TV and I'm down here after all of my shows, and I'll just play the like a baseball game on mute, and I'll just be like, "Oh, nice hit." But if the Phillies are, I don't really care. The best time ever, okay, was COVID-19. Wasn't that great? No, was after COVID-19. Like it was still going on, but they were starting to get some things under control. And the NBA season decided that they would not start until 2 days before Christmas, right? So now you've got football about to head into the postseason. You have basketball that's starting in late December and now is going to go through all of July. So all of that garbage in the summer where all you have is baseball is negated because we have playoff basketball going through mid-July. And then preseason football starting up before you know it. You're already doing your drafts. You're already drafting best ball, and you're back into NFL before you know it. So yes, that would be my best time. As of now, yeah, it's these fall months, but that was the best time ever. I would love for basketball to go back to starting their season right around Christmas time because you're never going to have a downtime. You're never going to have more than a month or so of downtime. I missed that.
I'm taking October right before that. But as you were saying about some of these games last week, you managed. That's what we said about the Carolina game. The beautiful thing is you don't have to bet it. But man, if you were it was good to be 19. It's good to be 19 overall, and it's definitely good to be 19 when you see this many green check marks on the heavily bet public favorites.
It was crazy, man. I bet the over in that Falcons Panthers game. Andy Dalton is 4-0 to the over in every game that he's started. Like they have a good offensive line that can actually block. So they fall behind because their defense is terrible. They're forced to throw. They put points up, high total this week against Washington, but they just, these games go over routinely with Andy Dalton. Because look, Chuba Hubbard's still been really good, right? Deontay Johnson's been good. Andy Dalton's been more than serviceable. They even got Jatavian Sanders mixed in along the way. I mean, yeah, they've been a great overplay. But betting them, I just refuse. I said it on my video on the Odd Shopper channel last week. It's like, I know the quote unquote sharp play will be Carolina. I can't bet Carolina right now. They're like 6-19-1 against the spread since the start of last year. Sorry, 6-15-1 against it. Something terrible, right? They don't cover. I was on the Lions though. I know that was chalky, but that was Lions all. I really that might have been a public play, but I don't see. The Cowboys are lifeless. So some of these spots I look at the Bucks, but I grabbed that inside of 2.5 after the Derek Carr news. Like that's just sure 72%, but clearly the Bucks were the right side. I was wrong on the Bills.
Thank you for keeping me off those Kirk Cousins kneel downs.
Did he
I don't
have?
know what I was.
Did
He
he
had
kneel
those
down?
kneel downs. He
Yeah,
kneeled that ball right
I
down
got
at
you,
the end.
brother.
And there was one time he looked right at the camera, like I was like, he knew
Yeah.
you saved my ass.
That's
He
how
did.
that's how they get you because you go, he'll never run. Well, here's one I have for you. I liked Calvin Ridley thinking a bounce back week. You had Brian Callahan saying we're going to get him the ball more. Like he goes, that's on me. We have to find ways to get him the ball more. He's elusive. He's quick with the ball in his hand. And we'll figure it out. We'll get him the ball. Well, I had him. I even laddered him up to 60, and he finished with 0 receptions for 0 yards. So that's what I'll be remembered as from last week. What's crazy though, he had a team high 8 targets. Will Levis is just utter dog shit. And I went back, I forget who it was. Someone from the fantasy footballers, Holloway, posted all of the targets for Ridley from that game. I think there was one catchable. He had 8 targets and 0 receptions against a terrible Colts defense. So mistakes were made, but we move on.
I'll tell you something about losses like that. This was something that I mentioned in a bet that we actually ended up winning, but you had an early premature
Josh
19-year-old panicker. Yeah. Here's what I know about losses. Like I was watching the Oilers play last night, and Mark Messier was saying there is nothing worse than a Game 7 loss. It just stays with you. It stays with you, and you can still feel it in the building.
Rather
Awful
get
close
swept?
losses. It's called a no sweat bet the other way. Okay, I lost. I'd rather have 0 yards, 0 catches and go, yep, lost that one. You really don't lose much sleep over that. You know how many people were the Jordan Addison 1 yard from a couple weeks ago? I mean, some of those hairs are turning gray on your head. And when you get crushed, you're keeping a full head of hair. And that's kind of what we're looking for in losses. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I've always subscribed to that philosophy. Go ahead. Kill me 19-1 in game 1. People write their headlines as if I lost 2 games. Then look, I don't watch baseball either, but because it's, so many people I grew up with, the Mets, I believe, got killed in game 1, and then they just won game 2. The series is tied at 1, and then what happened last night? I don't even know. Do you know?
They lost 8-0, but your point stands.
Yeah, and if they win the next game, the series is tied at 2.
Right. No, that's a good call. You're right. They write the headlines like they lost 2 games. You're right. It's true. Especially in baseball. Like in baseball, it doesn't mean a thing. It's totally irrelevant how many runs you win or lose by on a given game. Totally irrelevant. Like in basketball, a little bit different because you go, okay, they just overmatch and overpower them every step of the way. and it's the exact same 5 starters probably coming out there the following game. You know what I mean? Football, there's a little bit more parity. Baseball, one ball that lands on the chalk and results in a bases clearing triple, or just different pitchers on the mound, the lefty to the right. All baseball's so much different than any other sport, where a big win or a big loss is entirely irrelevant from game to game.
Well, here's what I know about sports bettors. Last week, yesterday, what happened with Jordan Addison 2 weeks ago, that's the last thing on their mind. The one thing they're always concerned about is their next bet. And allow me, because Alex is in Disney World, to show you some of the donkey charts. Alex, I hope you're waiting on the longest, most miserable lines known to man. And I know they're there. I had to go to Disney. I went during your favorite time of the year, COVID-19. 20 went when there was a limited selection of people in the park. It was 20% capacity. It's the only time you could ever get me to go to a place like that.
It had its benefits.
And I went on this like Star Wars ride that everybody was raving about. I'm not a Star Wars guy. I never have been. And you go on this ride, I'm like, wow, this is going to be the most revolutionary ride ever. I was interested to see. I wonder what this is like. 2024, or 2020, there's going to be some crazy features on this ride. So it's one of these interactive rides, and they give everybody a role. I had to be like on the defense mechanisms of a ship. Some other people were in the front fighting. I had to just hit buttons on a wall, and I just went, I'm not doing this. I'm hitting 0 of those buttons. And I guarantee you our ship is going to be just fine, and we're going to make it to the end of the ride. So, yes, I was a party pooper. But it's bad enough you're dragging me to Disney. Then you're dragging me on this Star Wars thing. Thank God the line was only 20% at capacity. And now I'm on the defense systems of a ship I don't give a shit about.
I don't understand theme parks for adults, if we're being honest. Like, particularly Disney World. Alex, you do a great job producing the show, but yeah, it's not for me. Especially waiting in line. Were you ever a Howard Stern listener?
Yeah, man. I brought it up Artie Lang last week, and then you said you were a longtime listener, and I was like, absolutely.
Okay. Do you remember High Pitch Mike?
Yes.
Artie Lang eviscerated him for going to Disney World by himself once. And I mean, it was one of those situations where you thought a homicide was about to occur because he had upset him so much. I'm going to send you the clip. Anybody, just Artie, High Pitch Mike, Disney World, look it up on Google. You will appreciate this. Look it up. But I don't even want to bring my kids. I don't even want to bring my kids to Disney World.
Good. They learn that they learn that discipline nice and early. Hey, look, you don't always get the things you want. You don't get Disney World, but hey, we're Pennsylvania folk. You're getting Hershey Park.
Dude, Hershey Park's pretty sweet, actually. But no, this is more so like if I'm doing a big trip, let's go somewhere cool. Let's go. Let them learn about something. I'm not saying I'm gonna like, oh, museum is your vacation, but I'm saying like we live in an awesome country, and this country's got some awesome stuff. Like, why is Disney World the attraction that everyone wants to go? Am I that far off base?
No, there should be an attraction where you can develop a certain portion of your brain that requires math and requires smarts, like the donkey charts. There should be a place we could go
very nice.
Where we have all sorts of percentages and we see what all sorts of people are doing. And here we go for this week. We have a long donkey list. But you know what? For what it's worth, I've always looked at anything under like anything in the 60s isn't all that crazy. But, once you start getting into 70s, that's a lot of people. So why don't we talk about some of these games? And I mean, the marquee matchup on the slate. What do you call it again? The game of the week?
I think that's what they call it.
The game of the week. Yeah. I always call it the 4:00 game that everybody watches.
Let's call it that. It's a lot easier to say.
Yeah, the 4:00 game that everyone's going to be watching.
Yeah.
Chiefs, Niners. Now, I don't know where the spread currently. I'm not a huge tracker of public standard spread movement. If this many people are on the Chiefs, did it move a little bit towards even?
By the way, for those of you looking to get into the business, that was right there a masterclass in segue from Andy Francess right there. No, very nice job.
No. It can be way better than that.
80, it's pretty good. 83% on the Chiefs. Here's why. Look, I'll tell you this much. I probably just won't bet this game, but I won't bet against Mahomes as a dog. It's just, it hasn't been profitable. So you could, this is what I always find like super funny about the way people look at sports betting. They look at it and I'm not even a big trends guy, right? But they look at like very narrow scope, individual basis. They never widen the horizon and kind of zoom out 30,000 foot view. What's happened? So, right. Like they'll be like, no, the Chiefs aren't winning this game. Revenge spot for the Niners, losing another Super Bowl to the Chiefs, this and that and everything. And you know what? The Niners might end up winning this game. It's very possible. But Mahomes is 12-1-1 career as an underdog against the spread. So for me, it's like, you don't have to bet this game. Why am I tempting fate? Even if you were to win this, you'd still be down so much money betting against Patrick Mahomes as an underdog. So to me, I just don't see the point unless like you know more than everybody else does and your gut tells you that San Francisco won't lose this game because they've lost to the Chiefs before. But that, as a matter of fact, with Mahomes has been, you know this, you've watched as much football as I have. Many people watching this show have as well. If there's one mistake that anyone could make is it's like, well, this is now finally, okay, we've come to that point. It's Patrick Mahomes' time to lose as an underdog. And every time someone says that, it doesn't happen. So what's the point of me being like, this is the time? I just won't bet it.
I do have a couple spots that I tend to like in this game. A couple weeks ago on Monday Night Football, I was all over the Kareem Hunt props. Just given that situation and the opponent, I thought he was going to get a ton of work based on how Andy Reid has used his running backs. You kind of saw him get that in the previous game, and he had no allegiance to Carson Steele. So we hit all those. And like you said, sometimes you got to zoom out and just, it's sports betting. You turn your back on more people than Game of Thrones around here. And that's what I'm going to be doing this week. I'm looking at Kareem Hunt unders. This probably, as the plus 1.5 point spread suggests, is going to be a closer variety game than Carr versus Kansas City in Kansas City. My thought was Kansas City will get up on Carr at some point and they'll be able to slowly kind of keep running at them, which is basically what they did. But this time around against San Francisco's defense, which has been playing a little bit better every single week, I'm showing you I grabbed these right before the game. I'm showing you the under 52.5 rushing yards, but right after this, the under 67.5 rushing and receiving for Kareem Hunt. Now, I know typically he's been a pretty good receiver, and if you look at last game, he really only caught one. It was kind of a scramble. He was coming off the field on third downs. If he was on the field on third downs, I wouldn't mess around with that. I would stick with the rushing. But since they took him off the field on third downs, I'm not going to factor in some huge receiving total, even though I do know that they use Pacheco a lot in the screen game. I didn't see as many design screens for Kareem Hunt. Maybe he's just a little bit slower at this point of his career. But if you're talking about 68.5 rushing and receiving, that's an under that I'm definitely gravitating towards. Do you have any sort of feels on that?
Yeah, it's one of these games where I don't have the greatest feel on anything. It's really weird, right? Because San Francisco, like red zone offense had been an issue. They don't look like the same team that dominated throughout the year and went to the postseason last year, went to the Super Bowl. And I think, clearly the Christian McCaffrey impact is pretty significant. But with Kareem Hunt in this spot, 52.5. What'd you say rushing plus receiving was?
68.5. On the road at San Francisco.
I don't think I touch it.
That's fair. Another bet that I liked on that rushing side, as he's been losing these weapons and fewer players have been able to just get open despite the massive breakout from Juju Smith-Schuster last week. I think we've seen an uptick in Mahomes rushing, and in a game against the Niners where they could try to get after him, 20.5 seems like a number that I can also get behind.
Love that.
I'm basically going down Hunt, and because of that stuffing on Hunt in passing situations, he's going to have to scramble a little bit for some first downs, which we've clearly seen him do a little bit more than he would when this was a 500 yards a game passing offense.
Yeah, listen, this is one of those spots where I'm definitely with you. Mahomes led the Chiefs in rushing yards in the Super Bowl last year against the Niners. 66 rushing yards for Patrick Mahomes in that game. I mean, that's only one game. It's a small sample, don't get me wrong. But it's just this type of spot where he's going to need to be more mobile. He didn't really need to do that last week. You know, there's certain spots where Patrick Mahomes just is not going to be. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't need to use his legs, don't make Patrick Mahomes use his legs. It's that simple. But in one of these spots, I think you likely will see him use his legs. And I would go to Mahomes happily here over 20.5. He's probably going to have to run. They can bring pressure. Obviously, Bosa's a force. They're also better in coverage than the Saints team has been. So there's going to be less guys open downfield, less opportunities to just get them the ball in wide open windows. I like that a lot. I understand where you're going with the correlation on Hunt and Mahomes, but I'd rather personally, I like the Mahomes spot better. He's probably going to have to run a few times. And when he does run, he can run. I mean, he's got great vision.
One other guy in that game that I just wanted to point to, one of my big themes, and this came up it comes up pretty much every single week. I sell appreciated assets and buy depreciated assets and numbers. And we saw him have a big week 2 weeks ago. Brandon Aiyuk having the same reception total as George Kittle at 4.5. And I do understand the Chiefs have, pretty good defense, actually a very good defense. And they have, what's the name of the guy who took L'Jarius Sneed's spot in the secondary for them over there? He's a good corner, but I do think Aiyuk, that missed training camp, I really feel like affected his early season play, but I do feel like we are far enough out of that. We saw a big game 2 weeks ago, and now, okay, one relatively slower game because the offense was moving and had a lead early, and they can kind of milk it in the second half, but in a game that's supposed to be within 2 points, and he's at 58.5 on FanDuel, that's not his true total. A true total to me is where you are close to when the season ends. And my thought is he's got multiple games like 2 weeks ago in him, and later in the year, we're never seeing Aiyuk at 58 again.
You like this game. What made you dig into this game? Just because it's the popular game of the week?
The beautiful thing about me, you like that for a little? How's that for some magnanimous qualities where I just the beautiful thing about me, let me start where, is I really just like an old school guy. I go to your website, OddsShopper, and I just scroll the whole list of my favorite categories: rushing, receiving, rushing attempts.
I do too.
And I just go, who the hell stands out to me? And if you saw the screenshots we used last week, we had a couple Patriots receivers, and I said, that stands out. And when I looked and I see 58.5 next to Brandon Aiyuk, that just stands out. Brandon Aiyuk is not a 58.5 yard receiver. So then I ask myself the question, who's covering him? Is it Patrick Surtain? And if it's not one of the upper echelon cornerbacks, then to me, 58.5 is a number I'm pretty much always betting. If we look over the course of the season, Zay Flowers was another one last week. I brought him up to you. He dudded out that 1 week. It was a no sweat bet. And then every week since then, he's absolutely crushed. He was at 49.5, then 55.5, and now he's at 60.5 or 61.5.
You have to buy low in these spots. You absolutely have to buy low. And you know what? Sometimes it's not going to work out. Sometimes it's simply not going to work out. Like Ridley, I was talking about last week. I had one not work out on Sutton. They were no sweat bets. But then we hit a Fields or a George Pickens 100 plus and 110 plus at 9.5 to plus 950. That covers every one of those risks that you take on buy lows, on buy low ladders and stuff like that. When you end up being right on those, and it happens more than you'd think. If you're buying low on these guys that are still getting the opportunity, they're still on the field a lot. So I think you have to have prerequisites, Andy. Like, I'm not buying low on a guy where I go, well, I'm not sure what's going on, but it's like third in the team in targets through 6 weeks, and he hasn't been the guy anymore, and his snap count's trending down. That's not a buy low. That's just a stupid buy. The buy low is where everything looks consistent outside of production, right? Like the production hasn't caught up with opportunity yet. And then you get a good matchup. So you say he's running routes on 90+% of dropbacks. He's playing 90+% of snaps. He still leads the team in targets with a 25% target share. Air yard shares 50% of the team. So one deep ball that they finally connect on, he has a huge game. Those are the type of guys that I'm looking for. Same with the backfield. You can look and adjust it for all the matchups, the tough matchups they've had. Well, now it's finally a good matchup, but he struggled and his prop is down. Buy low on those spots, sell high on a lot of other spots. It's the way to go. And sometimes you're going to look dumb like I did last week. But when you're right, it totally wipes out all of those losses when you ladder it up to 100 as well.
Speaking of which, should we revisit that situation from last week? And I just thought it was worth a calculated gamble. And that was you read out all the alt overs for Demario Douglas, and he hit them all, other than I think 100. He hit 60, 70. He was listed at 30-something yards, and we took the calculated gamble. You only get one shot for Drake May's first game. Guess what? He threw for however many. He threw for 3 touchdowns. I forget how many yards. Now you know. And the thing is, that could have completely dudded. But I said I wasn't just going to take the standard over. Give me the shot that this works out for one of them on alts, so that way you're going to lose one, but you made so much on the other that it doesn't really matter. So
exactly. That's exactly what it is. It doesn't matter. You're going to have some really ugly ones where then you just buy them lower the next week in a lot of cases. But
so to me, the number hasn't moved up enough considering their opponent this week. As long
Jaguars
as we know
in London,
Drake May is playing, Demario Douglas with Mac Jones was one of these guys raking up receptions. It was a true disservice that Jacoby Brissett couldn't get him the ball because I mean, it's known that he's the guy that was getting the most open, that in preseason, he was getting the most hype, and he clearly displayed that last week. And this is one where if he has one more game, now he's in the 50s. This is a tick up that I'm actually okay with because it's simply not that high against a pass defense that is this bad. And you have this rookie playing with some confidence after that game, even in a loss.
No problem at all. The only thing I don't love is that they used 4 receivers a lot. But if that's not a concern, what I mean is like they weren't just using Polk, Douglas, and Booty or Kendrick Bourne. It was all 4 of those guys. But aside from that, yeah, you're right there. You were there last week. Plus Jacksonville, this team, I mean, they're staying in London for a back-to-back game for the second time in 2 seasons. That was my biggest miss last week on sides. And I had a great week on sides, but my biggest miss last week was that Jacksonville game. I thought, okay, they have real experience here. Trevor Lawrence is 3-1 in London for his career. The only rookie quarterback to ever win a game in London. And, you know, this is finally like a real get-right spot. Not that they come out and they crush Chicago. Of course not. I just to cover this game. I actually had the money line at plus 120. It closed at minus 110 in some spots, and they're just terrible. I mean, they are a terrible, terrible football team. So my biggest misread of the week was Jacksonville thinking that, you know what, they're bad, but what a great spot for them to, you know, they weren't home, but that's home away from home. They got embarrassed by Caleb Williams and the miscues, the turnovers. So, yeah, I mean, even a guy making a second career start across the pond in his second career start, there's still probably value on some of these Patriots guys with how bad Jacksonville is.
Look, it may have not gone well for you on a couple different fronts, but I will tell you this. You brought that Swift receiving stat to my attention, and I needed a third leg on the Patreon. I try to give out, you know, the 3-leg boost for the Sunday game because FanDuel gives it. And I needed a third leg. and we gave that one out at 25 plus receiving. And had you not brought up how bad the Jaguars were at defending that, I probably wouldn't have taken it. So there is some treasure found amongst the trash. I just came across something that
real quick. Let me just say real quick. I bet it up to 40 too. I had the 25, bet it up to 40, had it in the Discord and everything as well. And that was at like plus 450 or something. He hit it. And then 5 minutes later, they ruled it was a backwards pass. And they took away, he was at 43. They took it away. And he finished with 49. Still hit 2 rungs of the ladder, but that one stung a little bit. Anyway, you said you just came across something.
Yeah, hopefully I get this up. I should have this up in time for sure for this next thing that wasn't available when I was looking for some Thursday night sniffs.
Let me guess.
Okay.
Audric Estime over a 13.5 rushing.
This guy's a son of a bitch.
Am I right?
There it is.
I bet it at 13.5 a couple minutes ago. Is it already up to 6? No, DraftKings still.
Yep. So there is 13.5. And what I'm going to tell people, don't take it at 13.5. Take it at 25 plus.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why. Just go look at rewind the clock 3 weeks ago. This was a 100% quote unquote 3-headed monster. They took Estime's back up because Estime was on IR. They've been so displeased with Javonte Williams, and they thought maybe Jaleel McLaughlin would be able to provide something kind of like Kamara did in his Sean Payton offense. He's been nothing like that. They're looking for a running back. They really are, secretly, while being forced to ride these other 2 ones. So they had a third running back come in. What was that guy's name? And he's already back. He's already on IR. The dude that was filling in, God, I forgot his name, that was filling in for Audric Estime, the third running back that was doing well for them. He was a waiver wire pickup, and now he's already injured. But then Estime got
Tyler Beatty.
Yes. So they were using those 3 to begin with. So this guy was getting series already. Audric Estime had a long run in his 2 starts. He got hurt in his first start, but had a run for like 12 yards. Last week, he had a run for 12 yards, and it was his first game back coming off of IR. So just a few touches, 2 carries. Javonte only had 6. Watch the slight uptick tonight. Watch the slight uptick, and if that's going to be the case, and this is their only run, all it takes is one good run, and I feel like, okay, this is going to be, he's getting every other series. And if he's getting every other series, he's going over 25. He might go over 40, and you don't have to invest much because the 25 is already an alt. I'll make sure I try to get this in time for you, unless it loses, and then I'm happy that I didn't get it in time for you. So that's just something that I came across.
Yeah. How about this too, though? Did you see what Sean Payton said about him?
Look,
you want me to read it?
I do want you to read it, but where does he lie on the coach reliability rankings? So like you take Payton's word?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say it's quite as bad. No, I actually don't take his word because he's talked about getting Marvin Mims more involved in this and that. But here's the difference that I see here. Javonte Williams lost a fumble and had a crucial drop late in that game. Jaleel McLaughlin hasn't been particularly efficient, although I actually like the over 22.5 on him. I got it at plus money on Bet365 earlier, so I don't mind that either. There's a real possibility that Javonte Williams just doesn't get nearly as much work today. And Sean Payton, after last week, talking about the young guys, said explicitly, like, I want to see more of Audric. So we'll see how this plays out. He said he wants to see more of Troy Franklin and Deshaun Vele as well. So he's talking about the young guys here. But the Saints are allowing 5.3 yards per attempt to running backs. They've allowed 169 rushing yards per game over the last 4 weeks. They've been absolutely gashed. The red zone efficiency has been pretty good on defense, but in between the 20s, they've been terrible. And then last week, they were just terrible everywhere, coughing up 50 to the Bucs. But Sean Payton is absolutely in a spot now with, remember, Estime only came back off the IR last week, right? So he only came back last week, only had 2 carries, one carry, 1 for 15. But so he said, we have to see these guys. We're a young team. I want to see this runner as well. I want to see Estime. So we'll see. Maybe
that last sentence sounds like a fantasy fan. Like, I want to see Estime.
Yeah. Maybe it's nonsense, but at 13.5, who cares? Right? Like, who cares? Just,
I know. So I'm not taking him for 13.5 simply because to me, it's 25 or nothing. I really think I don't think he's getting 2 carries for 14 and then he's not being used. Part of my sniffs for this game is I'm taking the under on Javante's rushing attempts. So I'm correct across the board or I'm losing across the board.
That's where I'm at too. I even went over on McLaughlin because I'm down on Williams this week.
Solid sniffing. Now it's
a full win or a full lose. You're right. You either get nuked or you and just crushed, or you have a really nice week. Yeah.
So let's go back to these donkey charts for a little. I want to talk about the Lions game. It's interesting. The Lions are playing the Vikings, and as of yesterday, it's showing that the Lions were plus 1.5. I'm assuming that means this game is in Minnesota, correct?
Correct.
So first we'll start with what was your read on this game? Is there anything that you like? Because if I'm bringing it up, there happens to be something that I like.
I thought Minnesota would be a more popular side of this one, but it's not. I like Minnesota in this one. You're not going to get Aiden Hutchinson's absence moving the line like 3 points. It's just, unless you're a quarterback, when do you ever see that? I think it's
about that.
Yeah, I still think it's a pretty huge deal though. And it's more of a prop spot. Like, you'd love to ladder Jefferson, but I'm not doing that because you're not getting real value on a Justin Jefferson ladder. But I might consider looking into, and I haven't dropped any of these plays yet, so I don't know. I might consider some like ladders on some of these, non-Justin Jefferson, one of them, if I can find the right one, Vikings players, because that might be where there's actual value. And I might not even ladder it, Andy. I might just bet an alt line on it because Jefferson's great, but Sam Darnold has a 250-yard passing prop. Aiden Hutchinson, get this. I want you guys to understand how impactful he's been on the season. It's not just that he was good. What a brutal leg break too. But the Lions have already played a bye, right? Or already had a bye. So they had only played 5 games. Hutchinson still leads the league in sacks, hurries, quarterback hits, and pressures. And he's played 1 fewer game than most teams. That's how dominant this guy is. The run defense is very good. They're a pass funnel defense. They are better. And they've had a lot of, I think like the most tight window throws have been against Detroit. But if you have more time in the pocket, those windows start to open up a little bit more. I understand why you'd go to Detroit here. Like, okay, they're still a great team. Vikings have to lose. I think that's probably the prevailing sentiment here. It's like the Vikings can't go undefeated. I agree. But I'm not betting Detroit here in this game, actually. I want to look for some over props on some receivers for the Vikings. That could be fun.
Yeah, so I mean, as you were talking about that, I pulled up one of the potential options for this game, which would be Jordan Addison, who's really getting a lot of good looks, a lot of air yards. He rarely gets a catch for 5 yards, and I'm seeing 47.5 over there on FanDuel.
That's a good point. Like if he hits it, he could hit it in 2 plays.
Oh, 100%. He just is that kind of guy. He's really good, man. I've been watching these games, and even in that Jets game, he ended up missing the over by like 1 or 2 yards. There were so many just misses to him. He is a clear part of this offense. Like, it's him and Jefferson running this variety of routes. And when they pay a ton of attention to Jefferson, Addison is one of the main people who benefits from that.
Yep.
And the reason I brought up this game was, and I'm glad you talked about Hutchinson being out. I have this sneaking suspicion. We've seen traces of it. The Lions getting in these back and forths. We saw it last year for certain. And now I really think we're going to start to see them getting in these high scoring games. And I think you want to tie yourself to some of these players. And since there is a player on the Vikings, on the Lions that has had an awful year to this point, look, the offense has been spread around. Jameson Williams has had big games. Amon-Ra St. Brown has had big games. You're seeing Tim Patrick get some catches
Sam
in there.
Laporta, huh?
His total is so low that now it is all tied to the game just keep like repeatedly going back and forth and them not being able to get a lead. I mean, they are underdogs in this game and just run Montgomery to the ground. And Montgomery's rushing prop is in the high 40s, by the way, unless I saw that incorrectly. I think his rushing prop was in the high 40s. Another little wink to me that there might be some passing in this game. So I'm looking at Sam Laporta. Let me go find him here. I forgot what, there he is, 41.5. He's had such a down year to this point. In week 11, is this going to be his line? If the answer is no, then I think you should be taking that over 41.5. That's one of my
might
snips
be though, Andy.
Then you don't take this. But
So
I'm factoring in Hutchinson. I'm saying that this team gets into more back and forths. I bet you he cleared this against Seattle when they were going back and forth.
He had 53, but it was on 4 targets.
It's a rough stretch.
I don't know what for sure. Look, I love Laporta. I'm happy to say I was very early on Sam Laporta last year. I like this guy. What's his target?
You asked me my philosophy, and like this is just that number stands out to me. And then I'm like, okay, well, who are they playing? They're playing the Vikings. They're underdogs. They're not likely to be up by many touchdowns, which means potentially more throwing than we've seen out of them in these last couple of weeks. So I'm not going to blanket apply what we've seen already because I think everything might change. I mean, that's the sniff there, that the dynamic of Detroit's games shift toward looking more like last year. And yes, more is drawn up for Jameson Williams. They have a couple extra. I mean, Khalif Raymond was their leading receiver. The targets have been spread everywhere. So maybe this one goes down in flames as well. He can still have a bad game like in Seattle and clear that. Like 50 yards for Laporta, you'd be like, before the season started. Now, I mean, 44 yards gets the job done. This is not an alt situation. This is just a standard 9 to 5 clock into work, take your over and go home at 5.
I definitely understand the reasoning for sure.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm still uncertain how much of a difference Jameson Williams makes on this team, right? Because last year, Laporta was far and away the clear number 2 in this offense behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now it's Jameson Williams. I mean, shockingly, Laporta has a 10% target share this year. I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah. I will be taking it's just too many picks to give in one game, but it's just so I hate this. I look at all the games and I go, well, that stands out there. And it always happens to be in one game. I'm going under 3.5 receptions for Jameson Williams. He hasn't cracked more than 3 since that early breakout. And he's catching these deep bombs, but they don't pepper him consistently. And even in that huge game this past week, he got to 3. They set him at 3.5. I'm taking that under 3.5. We'll see if I eat that one too. That's my sniff on this game. I'm buying the depreciated asset, selling the appreciated asset. That's just what I'm doing. St. Brown is a hold. He stays in that lingers area where I don't touch players in that number. And that's where I'm at for that game, along with some Addison as well. It's so crazy. I got all those picks for the Niners game, all the picks for this game, and I really do look at all the games. This thing you see on your screen, I'm going down the charts. I go, and so many don't stand out to me. So that's kind of where I'm at. But Dave, we could shift this to something that does catch your eye that maybe I wouldn't even have remotely on my radar.
Yeah, I think there's a couple spots we could look at this week. Now, if you wanted to have some fun, you could, hit it with like the Brian Robinson, J.K. Dobbins anytime touchdown parlay. Don't mind that. J.K. Dobbins is just getting so much work right now. And clearly what this team wants to do, what Jim Harbaugh wants to do, what Greg Roman wants to do, they just want to run the football. Like Justin Herbert, even coming off the bye, he's clearly not at 100% right now. Gus Edwards is on the IR. Vidal is like, he's in there, but I don't really know how much work he's going to get. We wondered coming in, do they trust J.K. Dobbins to be the bell cow back? Well, I think the answer is is indisputable right now.
Yeah. What did he? How many? How many touches did he have last week? It was an
Yeah, I think
absurd,
he had
preposterous amount, right?
I think he had 25 carries last week. He had
And 2
25
catches.
Yeah, a one. Yeah, right. 2 receptions and a touchdown. He had 25 rushing attempts, and he's going up against an Arizona Cardinals team. You know, I use the term lifeless a lot for some of these defenses. Arizona was one of those sell high spots, right? They came in, they shit all over the who was it? The Rams? Who did they? Right? They blew the Rams out, and then and then they get smoked by Washington, and then they come in and they beat the 49ers outright. And then they get lit up last week in Green Bay. They're all over the map. I don't even count the 49ers game or the Rams game. They're divisional spots. Those teams have struggled. The Niners specifically have struggled against the Cardinals. Now you've got this AFC team that wants to run the ball down your throat coming into Arizona. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, to me, with his rushing prop, the only team that's allowed more rushing yards to opposing running backs than the Arizona Cardinals this season is the Carolina Panthers, which is insane. But running backs on the year are averaging, Andy, 4.7 yards per attempt against the Arizona Cardinals, and they just want to run the football. So, yeah, 72.5 on J.K. Dobbins. I mean, this right here is the clear ladder to 100 play. This is the clearest ladder it to 100, get in and get out. Like what's the best ladder? I'm going to have to find one. While you talk, I can find the ladder play on J.K. Dobbins. There's no way I'm not hitting this up to 100.
Do you think they're more or less gonna control that game?
Well, Marvin Harrison probably doesn't play with a concussion.
And I'm not trying to trick you or anything. I'm just genuinely asking.
Oh, I know. If that sounded me being assholish, that don't
No,
take it.
no, it's me. It was me judging my own way. Like, hey, do you think they're going to control this game? Do you? Like, you know, I just
But I also
let you know.
I was like, yeah. So it's football. There's a ton of parity in the NFL. So I try not to talk in absolutes because when people do that, they're really just trying to fool you, right? So I really do try to avoid speaking in absolutes. We've seen so much weird stuff happen this season. So I will, refrain from doing that. But yeah, like this is a Chargers team. Check this out, right? This is a Chargers team that on the year, do you know how many points per game they're allowing on the season? Just take a wild guess.
The Chargers?
Yeah.
I probably know this because I was all about getting Harbaugh's defense in fantasy. I know they had 2 cupcake matchups. Then they played. Then they had 2 losses. They played good defense against Mahomes, lost a close one. Then last week they played. I mean, they're probably only at 19 points.
And that would be pretty good, right? They're at 13 points per game.
Yeah. They were because they played. Yeah. Okay, I'm not surprised.
Okay, so you're right though that they had some easy matchups, but they
they're good. They're good.
17 points to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They had a hobbled Justin Herbert in that game. Taylor Heineke came in. I'm not saying they would have won anyway, right? They faced a good Pittsburgh defense, so they also haven't been good offensively. This is a team, like, if you're betting an under, the 44 here I like, but it's like the reason I say I don't speak in absolutes is because Dobbins might just not be good, but I think the stars align for us to say, okay, where's a guy that has maybe a lower prop than he should, that you could get him up at good plus money for 100 in the event that he once again has 25 yards and the defense stands up. If the defense stands up like they always do, Herbert will throw 25, 30 times and they'll feed the ball to J.K. Dobbins. That's just the way I see it. And they are road favorites.
The reason I was asking that, this is the beautiful thing. Like when people start kind of laying out something like that, my mind, this happened last week. You started talking about that Patriots game. And then you remember I was like, you're talking about this. And it just clicked into my head. Rookie Antonio Gibson receiving, couple checkdowns. That hit, by the way. I would have not bet that had you just talked, because I visualized what was going to be happening and what. Oh, Jesus Christ, I sound like some. Yeah, I visualized it, man. No, but I started thinking about the game from a macro level. As you were just explaining that, I'm like, he is going to get a ton of carries. they're likely to be controlling the game like they have been, these lower scoring games where the clock is just kind of dying because there's a lot of running. If they're going to have a lead, from what we saw last week from Kamani Vidal, who looked like a pass game specialist, so he clearly, after that 40-yard receiving touchdown, he's like going to be their third down back. What opportunities are there going to be for J.K. Dobbins to be catching a bunch of balls in a game like this? There are no receiving props listed, but my first thought, as you were saying, if they list him at 2.5 receptions, I'm putting that freaking under in there because he has.
I would too.
Yeah,
I would
so
too.
that's something to look for out there.
And Roman they don't like throwing the running backs if they don't have to, you know? I see what you're saying for sure. How about this though? Week 1 against the Raiders, 135 rushing yards. That's with Gus Edwards out there. Week 2 against Carolina. And by the way, I'm just thinking through this now with you. This isn't something that I've had like planned out. So feel free to just shut me up if I go too long. I'm just kind of like working through.
You want to know why? Because this is going to be the first pick in our same game parlay of the week. Clearly.
I'm working through the process with week 2, Carolina, 131 yards. Mind you, this was on 10 rushes for 135, 17 for 131. Then against Pittsburgh, they had no offense. Herbert was banged up. He did nothing. Against Kansas City, no surprise. He wasn't able to get anything going. And then last week, against a bad offense, but a good defense, 25 for 96. How much better is the Broncos defense than Arizona? They're not even in the same stratosphere, right? So I'm looking at it right now. If you wanted to, you make your own decisions. Don't come yapping at me if it's wrong. 100 plus is 270, plus 270 on Caesars. There's no alts that I'm seeing elsewhere. 120 is plus 550. 130 is plus 800. 140 is 11 to 1. I'm not sure I go that high, but I mean, the 110 at plus 390, I think you might get that at plus 450 in other spots. So yeah, that might be a spot I'm definitely looking at once we get done this show.
I'm scared of 100, but you could sell me on 90.
We don't need to go 100 though, because
how about we do 90 yards rushing for J.K. Dobbins? Bring it down 10. Or do you want to go 80? Can I get you down to 80? 80's plus money, right?
All right. So let's do 90, meet in the middle, plus 175.
Yeah. So let's go 90 yards rushing for J.K. Dobbins. I'm going to take the over on Jordan Addison because it's so low. I think an extra 10 yards will get us a decent plus money. Well, not so low, but it's like 50 yards. So I think 60 yards will take that to a similar plus money. Maybe not as solid as Dobbins, but I mean, I try to look at a parlay and say, this doesn't look crazy. And I know you pirates out there look at all your parlays. Yeah, of course all these guys are going to have 2 touchdowns each. Give me Laporta 50 yards.
Oh, we're going up to 50 on Laporta?
He's 41.
I like it. Why don't we leave it at 3? I mean, this is already an insane, I guess it's going to be a mega.
A MegaloDAVE parlay?
Yeah, I mean, really.
No, this is a MegaloDAVE. This is a MegaloDAVE.
Really well, not really, because you got 2 out of the 3 in here. I don't have anything I love enough to put in it right now, but
if you want a regular chalk play, we could just do the standard over on rushing for Mahomes. We both did agree on that.
Oh, I like that. Sure, let's throw that in there. Sure. Yeah. All right, so Dobbins 90 plus, Laporta 50 plus, Mahomes 20.5, and Demario Douglas 60 plus on Caesars brings us to plus 31.89.
So, they want more than that. They want plus 5,000. I mean,
going, oh, what is this shit? Yeah, I mean,
this is God. We came here for a parlay, not these plus 3,800s that you give out. Come on, what are you guys doing here? Either I want to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, or I don't want to be placing that parlay. That's how we're ending this show. Thank you guys so much for another week of a Dave and a Dan. Always a pleasure. Keep up the great stuff that you're doing for us. You're liking, you're commenting, you're going over to Dave's videos on his channel. You're showing love and appreciation over there. It's very much appreciated. My channel, their channel, we're in the infancy channel stages. You watch a video from the NHL, you think your click is doing anything for them? They're just fine. But your clicks all make a difference for us. And I hate having to ask, but it really does. So litter us up with some engagement, because that's the only way this stuff can grow even bigger. Who knows? Maybe me and Dave will be in a studio one day if you guys help bring us up these charts like it's currently been trending each week. We'll see if we can somehow top the last one. Dave, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Good luck to some of those sniffs, and Audric Estime plus 25 tonight. Let's do it.